Hi, good morning and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we're going to do the answers to the second in a series of what the heck were these tools used for. I'm in a different spot today because I got a vehicle stuck up on the lift. We didn't finish last night, so we are in a different location, which is good because I want to talk to you first about this tool right here. This tool here, you look at it and you think, nothing special about it. It's just like a little piece in there. But if you'll notice, you see that little slot right inside there? Years ago, replacing an axle on a car was really expensive. Today, you can get an axle fairly cheap. But back in the day, to change an axle was very expensive. It was a lot more cost efficient to just replace the boot and not replace the entire axle. So if you see right here, this is the boot right here, and on the end of the boot here and up here where it goes into the bearing itself, there's a band on there. And the band that they use today, you use you know what, let me show you what the other tool is. Okay. The band that they use today, you use a pair of pliers like this, and it goes over the top of the band, and it crushes the band onto the axle or onto the bearing, the CV joint, I should say, and it holds it tight. But back years ago, they had a piece like this here. And what they had is they had a metal band that went around on it, and the band used to slide in through this right here. It was a long adjustable band. You put it around there, you put this piece on it, you slid it through here, the band itself went into here, and then you curled just like this here, and it pulled it tighter. You put this in here like that, you put a wrench on this, and you rotated it, and it pulled the band tight as you needed it to crush that rubber boot. And then what you would do is you would take this and turn this up like that, and that would actually cause the band to bend into its receiver so it wouldn't go anywhere. You'd bend it off, you'd pull this piece out, you slide the tool off, you snip the end of the band off, and then you would bend it down on the collar, and that was what this was used for. This was a pain in the ass to use because when you put this band on there, if you tightened it up a little bit too tight, it would pull the retainer apart and it would break the lock clips off on the band. The way they do it today, like this, is much easier and it works a lot better. All right, that was the first one. I think that the second thing that we talked about was this. This, and these. Right? Now I believe, I don't think I showed you these, but these pieces also came with it. Did I ever use them? I don't think I ever did, and I could be mistaken. I don't know if they go with it or not. I think they do, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't ever remember using it, and I'm assuming that came with with that tool right there. This is one more piece that was in there also. All right, so we'll put that back in its pouch. Probably will stay in here for another 30 or 40 years. So if you ever have an antique to work on, you need tools, I'm your man, I got the stuff. All right. Today too is a problem. Years ago we used to have rear main seal leaks all the time. Today, to do a rear main seal, you either pull the engine or you pull the trans, and it's what they call a full circle seal. It goes around the back of the engine where the crankshaft exits the block. That seal fits inside there. Well, years ago, you didn't have that. It was a lot easier years ago to do it. Basically, what you used to do is you used to pull the oil pan down, and the rear main seal was actually like a rope seal. It was very pliable, and it was just like a piece of rope that was treated. Worked really good. And the way we used to do is we used to take off the rear journal in the back, take that journal down. In the journal itself was that rope seal. You would just pull that rope seal out, put a new rope seal in, cut the ends flush with this so that it was nice and flush with the journal. You'd go up to the engine itself, and now that the crankshaft up in the engine, you had that part that was still up inside the engine, and the crankshaft was in its location, so you couldn't get that out of there. What you would do is you would take this tool here, you would put it on the end of the rope seal, and you would push up on it while your assistant rotated the engine by the crankshaft bolt. When they rotated the engine, you would push this, and you would actually push that circled rope seal right out. You'd push it, and it would come right out. And you would throw it away, and you'd be done. Now, to get your new one back in, how do you get a rope seal back inside an area that is so tight that you can't even get you can't get this tool up and around because it's a full 180-degree circle? How do you get in there? The way you got in there is you took this tool here. You put this tool up in there. You pushed it around the top of the engine like this, around the crankshaft. You took this, you put it on here, like that. This was around the engine. You took your rope seal and you installed it in here. You would push this open, put your rope seal inside here, and now when this closed down, it would hold your rope seal tight. And this would go around the engine like this. You'd have your assistant rotate the engine up in the front, and while they rotated the engine, you would pull this, and as you pulled it, you would pull your rope seal, which was on the end. You'd pull your rope seal up and around, and it would come through, so it would be inside the engine like that. Then you would take your tool like this, and you would cut it off flush with the engine itself where the bearing was. You would cut it off real right there, just cut it flush. After you cut it flush on both sides, you'd put your bearing cap back up, you'd screw your journals back on, torque them down to the proper specs, put your oil pan back on, and that's it. You were out the door. The hardest part of that whole job was sometimes getting that seal back in. Truthfully, it was a pain in the ass to get that seal back in, but it sure beats what you got to do today, pull the engine or pull the trans. So it was a pretty decent type repair. And of course, with the full circle seal, this went right out the door and we don't use it anymore. So that was the second one. The third one, this is the third one. All right, years ago we had everything was carbureted. And back in the early days with carburetors, they used to have adjustment screws down on the bottom of the Ventura where you could adjust the air-fuel mixture, and that was adjustable. Well, back in like the 70s and 80s, the engineers came up with the idea is that you don't want people touching their own adjustments on their carburetors, so we're going to seal it from the factory, and we're just going to leave it that way, and nobody can touch it. Well, down on the bottom of the carburetor itself, on the very bottom of it, where the Ventura came through, you still had your needle jets inside. You would actually, your air fuel adjustment was still in there. But what they did is they put a cap over the top of it. It was a stainless steel that you could not even drill through it. If you tried to drill it, your drill would just wander all over the place, and you could never even get it to bite in to try to get in it. Well, somebody come up with the idea is that instead of trying to drill out those stainless steel caps, the carburetor is made of aluminum. Aluminum cuts very easily, doesn't it? Stainless steel, you can't do anything. There was two ways of doing it. You could, one, take the carburetor off the car, you turned it upside down, and you would go underneath there, and you would cut a little slot on the very bottom of it, and you try to knock that cap out. Did it work? Sometimes it did. Did you fuck up that? Did you screw up the carburetor? Yeah, a lot of times you would destroy that 4-barrel carburetor, and they were not cheap. But then somebody come up with the idea of making a tool like this. This is actually, there's another piece to it, which I threw it away, I didn't even use it. This piece here, you would actually go down to the bottom of the carburetor where you had that little metal, it was a metal plug, sort of looked like that, but the smaller, obviously. It was small, and it would go over the top of the aluminum carburetor here, and then this plug, which was stainless steel, was in the bottom of the carburetor. If you tried to hit this and knock it in to try to put a little hole, like a little dent so you can drill it, you would actually push this cap in further, and then it would hit into it and you couldn't get it out. So what we used to do is we had this tool here. And this tool used to go over the top, just like that. And this was obviously a little bit smaller. This would go over the top of it like this, and you would actually put this on your drill, and you would drill, and you would actually eat up part of that aluminum on the carburetor, and you would drill in approximately that far. You can see how far in I went? That you would drill in about that far, and then you would take this out, and when you looked at it, you would have just that cap sticking out, just like this. You would turn the carburetor over, and on the very bottom right here, you would just hit it underneath here with a metal drift pin or a center punch or anything like that, and you would knock that piece out. And then once you knocked it out, you had your adjustment underneath the bottom of the carburetor, just like a normal screw. And you could get in there with a tool, and you could adjust the airflow, air-fuel ratio. And that used to make the car run great. The way you knew that the airflow ratio was off on the thing, or it was running a little bit too lean, is you would actually have the car running. You would hold your hand over the top of the carburetor, and when you held your hand over the top of the carburetor, you'd have your fingers open just a little bit like that, and you put your hand over the carburetor, and the engine would smooth right out and run like beautiful. As soon as you took your hand off, the engine would start to rock all over the place because it was running too lean at idle. Once you accelerated, it didn't matter because that air-fuel adjustment didn't really even do anything once you're off of idle. So the way you checked it, put your hand over the top, it ran better. Then you knew you had to pull that carburetor off, put it on your workbench, and you had to use this tool to drill out the aluminum around that stainless steel plug, knock the plug out and adjust it, and then you were good to go. This was probably every tune-up that we did on the 4-barrel carburetors. This tool was used to drill those out. There was another piece to it. It was actually like a square little, like a rectangular box, and you would mount that on there with 2 tiny little screws in the carburetor, and you would put this over the top of it so you could center over the top of the hole and drill exactly in the right spot. I didn't use it because it was more of a pain in the rear end trying to put those tiny little screws into the aluminum carburetor. So what I used to do is just put this on here, put this over the top of it, and just spin it real slow until it started to bite into it. And once it started to bite into it, it didn't matter because then it would go right over the top of the plug like that, and it would eat up around the outside of the aluminum, and you go in as far as you needed to. You couldn't go in too far because inside here there was another insert to this also, which I no longer have. I disposed of that also, because after you've done quite a few of them, you know how far in to drill it. But there was an insert that was spring-loaded that would only allow you to drill in so far, and you couldn't go any further. These things worked great. Actually, all of these tools worked great. This one not so good, but this one was a real time saver. And after you did a tune-up and you gave the car back to the customer, they loved the way the car ran. And the reason that the car even needed to be adjusted is because it would build up a shellac buildup inside that the needle in the seat, and it would actually cause it to run a little bit leaner. All right, well that's it. That's the answers to my question of what the heck were these tools used for. And this is the second one in a series, so I'll post this in a few days, and stay tuned, and we'll do the answers for number 3 very shortly. All right, questions or any comments, or if you have any advice or something that you want me to do, or another series of anything you'd like me to do, let me know. And I end every video the same way. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.